Planet Zooers, welcome back to Houston Zoo. Sorry this took so long to get out. It was 2 weekends of work that I streamed about 16 hours of working in this particular build. I think it was about 20 hours total. So what I'm doing right now is just putting up a lovely little green fence there to block off where they're building the Galapagos Islands, because that's actually how it was the last time I went to the zoo. So I went ahead and added that feature right there as you come through. And what I'm doing right here is going to make a planter. So I have it to where it snaps and places onto that piece so that I can copy it directly to the other side so they're the perfect spacing apart to be able to just turn these and they'll meet all nice and pretty. And that is my method for making circles. We're going to make a lot of circles in this video. I cut out all of the attempts that didn't work. I did blueprint some of them for myself. One of them came out really cool, kind of had a moon shape going on in it, so I was like, oh, I'm going to keep that. And then I kept making what I was making. So right here, I'm just going around in a circle. I was redoing a lot of this path to get our entrance split going. And then what I'm going to do is just not worry about the spacing here, because it's going to go under the ground, and this is a stopper to keep people from walking on the path that goes inside this planter. So I don't really care if it's all perfect and connects all nice, or if it fights, because it's going to go underground. Bye-bye. But it will still work down there. And then we're going to use this here to make our planter some more circles. I told you it is a circle video because it is the Cypress Circle Cafe, so lots of circles. I use Google Earth as my reference image for everything that I do in these zoos, St. Louis Zoo and Houston Zoo. I don't have that shown at all, but while I was building this, I did go back and forth quite a bit to look at what kind of plants were in here, what they had going on in this little circular planter area. And so I would go back and forth to look at the different types of plants. At one point you can see my little plant palette over there, where I just throw out a couple of things that I think will play the part of the different plants that I was seeing in the images, and trying to get this filled in. Mine is definitely more full of plants than the one that was in the image. I guess I struggle with that. I'm like, it just looks too barren. It needs more going on in there. Or the Planet Zoo plants are just so robust. It's hard to find those in betweens. So here we're building the tree that is the center of the outside part of the Cypress Circle Cafe. So this is a bald cypress tree in the game, and they do have little knobs. This is just amazing. I'm not sure when they added these into the zoo or into the game. I want to say I think they're part of the wetlands pack, but I'm not 100% on that. But I was super excited that they are here because I saw that in the image and I was like, oh, how am I going to do this? And then they were in the game. I was like, yes, this is great. So I just did a nice circle right there to kind of guide me. And then to make these circle paths, I have it on 15 degrees, so I was counting how many times I turned it. And then you do have to delete that first one. It won't connect in a full circle until you delete that first one that you set down. It's just kind of weird like that. This was an in-game trim piece, and it just worked out perfect for the little space I had going. So I used that to start this little railing here, and used a metal piece to get this support on the sides, and we're gonna make another circle with them. And luckily they just, they landed in the right spot this time. It wasn't that hard to get this in there. So I just went around using, the snap feature in turning that circle. So I've moved the tree out of the way because the next thing that I'm making, I needed to know where the center was. I needed to know where the edges were. And so I'm using that to get this mud pillar directly in the center because I knew those. Anyway, that's math happening. I'm a mathlete, right? So I did that so that I could make this so I wouldn't have to do this over and over again. And so I noticed that it wasn't playing very nice, so I went ahead and got that other one in place so that I had one on each side, and then I was able to get that in there and be able to turn these so that I'm not doing that one by one. So I kind of backtracked a little bit. I took out the first ones that I put in and added the mesh piece so that I'm not going around one by one and putting mesh pieces in. I can just spin it. So now we're adding some plants. You can see my little plant palette out there, like my little artist palette for me to pick out my plants and put them in. So once I've kind of picked out what I want to use, then I can just grab them and throw them in here. And again, it did turn out a little more lush than it actually is. I struggle with that. I like to cover it up. Whenever I make habitats, I find I struggle with that too. I don't like just the boring dirt. So here we go again. I have moved all that out of the way. It's in the sky. I needed this time a bigger one, so I left the two little posts down here so that I could create a bigger X across this circle so that I could create the roof part. It has a circle around the tree, and then it has a different shape of the circle because they offset the circles, which you'll see when we get there. But this was the best way for me to measure and make sure that this was going to work. And so it looked like they were playing nice, and we're gonna go ahead and get them in, and it did. They connected. And so this is the next circle we're making to create the roof. I've just got it down on the ground for spacing right now, and we're going through. I should have kind of grouped this together at some point, and it would have been a lot faster than what I'm doing here, but I'd already made it this far, so I was like, well, here we are, we'll just do it this way, it's okay. And so I've got some other pieces that I'm thinking about using. I like to throw them off to the side if you're ever wondering what they're out there for. And this is the height here, so we're gonna use that. And then there is the resource image. I decided to leave it in this time, so you can kind of get a feel for what I was using to create this. And we're gonna bring that to the other side, and then we're gonna try to spin these, and I think that they end up being right in the right spot where I can spin them around and get the support in. You can see I do a test spin and then turn the clicker back on, and I decided to go for every 30 degrees and put one down. So now we've got this nice little area here, and it took a couple of tries for me to get the right width on the second part to create this roof. I did it a couple of times, so I took all that out, of course. I didn't want to show you all my failed attempts. They made great circles, they just weren't big enough. And so I ended up putting all this back down to measure out where I wanted it. I forgot to turn the snap on there, and then I ended up, well, you know what, I'm just gonna move this around anyway and take a look at it, and we'll put it in here. So turn the snap on, get that in place, doing the same thing, just making a bigger version of what we made last time, so it just takes a little bit longer, but the same technique. I like to get the two at the top, the two on the left and the right, make that a group, and then turn those until I can't make any more on the 45 degree, group it, drop it to 15, do the same thing, and then once they're repeating on themselves, then I'll group them again and then start filling in the spaces. So here we have kind of our shape, and I'm looking for trying to get what it's going to look like because it is offset. So we're going to move it around, and I did end up actually moving all of this over to the left from where I originally built the tree. I took that out. It just magically moves from where I started to this spot. As I was looking through the zoo, I realized I'm a little too off to the right, not quite in the right placement for where this building would be. And so what I'm doing now is grabbing these straight plaster pieces and bringing them into the middle so that they will meet up. And the reason I go all the way in is because you have that small offset to where it's super skinny, and then it needs to make sure that it's going to cover those longer areas. And so once I had that, around we go. And we're going to skip doing that over and over again. And then the same thing here, we're just going to start deleting and pushing pieces until we get to the very end and get them all either hidden or out of the way, whatever the case may be. And there's the last few, so I would test them. And now we're going to do some of the pathing that goes out into the wetland area of the zoo. And there's a nice circular thing going over some water. And as I was building that, I had to redo it a few times, mostly because I kind of forgot about different mechanics when you're building things with paths and have water. So the way that works is once the water is in, you can build the path really close to it. But once you take the water out and try to put it back in again, you won't be able to. So you do have to plan out how you're going to do these things when you're doing a complex water area. So you want to make sure that you have all the elements in place. So I went ahead and started the alligator habitat over here to the side and just did the basic of what I saw from Google Earth on the top. That way, when I put the water in, I don't have to take it out and put it back in again. So this is that little path that I was talking about. It took a couple of tries, so I skipped, getting it all in there. But I just hovered it as close as I could to the water and connected it to the path out there. So it has that little circular path going over the water, and then you have to kind of retrace your steps to get out of there. So we have our circular area, and we're going to put in our picnic tables. I really wish that I could use the advanced move on these instead of kind of manually placing them, but there we are. So now we're going to start this circle cafe, and what I did is just hit Control X on these pieces and then picked the piece I wanted and brought them down so that it would keep that curve that's already there from that first set of circle that's on the inside of this. For the glass right here, I tried a number of different pieces. It was really difficult to try to find the right pieces for this build, and I ended up using this New World piece. I think it's like a glass canopy top or something, so I ended up using that for my interior glass piece. And we're gonna do that same technique. We're gonna hit Control X, flip it down so that it kind of creates that curve for me, so that everything would kind of fall in line with that same circle shape, so I didn't have to recreate that, so to speak. And our wall didn't quite meet up, and I didn't want to use another big wall because the wider these pieces are, the harder they are to form a circle with. So I went ahead and used a little pillar. It's 4 meters tall. That way it would go straight in line with this. So we're gonna just put a little bit down at the bottom and get that covered up on the bottom side. So we have a full wall here so that the entrance will be on the left and the right. And then we have copying going on, just fun copy paste. That's the great thing about this game, is you can group things and then copy and paste it over. And I did that here, and on the other side we're going to copy this. We're going to make a glass window here, and it's also the door. So when I first start this, you'll see me put out several glass pieces because I literally was thinking piecewise when I built it instead of game mechanic wise. I can just use a 1 4x4 piece of glass because nobody's really opening this. It's not moving. It doesn't have animated parts. So when I got to the section where I was like, oh, I don't like the way the glass is going to overlap, and I was like, I'm so silly. I really don't need all these tiny pieces of glass in here. I just need the appearance that they're separated. So I end up taking out all those little pieces and replacing it with one big glass. But the benefit to doing it this way too, though, is it gives me the measurements and the spacing to get these things in the place that I wanted that for. So you'll see me go through a couple more glass pieces, and then we're gonna add in that 1 4x4 glass piece towards the end. I guess I can blueprint this guy. I have a couple of these that I've made, glass doors, so I probably need to go through a lot of my builds and grab these doors and make like a glass door pack to put on the workshop. So if you guys are interested, I would definitely be able to do that for you guys. Just let me know in the comments if you want me to put together some of my custom doors that I've done throughout the builds, because sometimes I just forget to go back into the files and grab some of these unique things that I make throughout Houston Zoo and St. Louis Zoo and just give those pieces, because I know sometimes you know, you have your own thing going and you just want to use a pre-made, something that somebody already made but has the look you're looking for. This is all recolorable as well, so except for that bottom thing, I don't know if it is or not. Looks like it might be. I know the handle is. I can see the color option for it there. But anyway, just let me know in the comments if you do want me to put together some of these little building things like the glass doors and put them on the workshop, because I do have several stuff in little packs like of my custom barriers that I make and custom fences. I've even put a circle pack up there. I should probably update it and add some more of the circles, because I've made several of them. After this build, I've made quite a few. I seem to find a lot of buildings that have circles to recreate. So what I did for this is I ended up using the longer tile piece to just get this in place for spacing. And then I went back and would Control X to the small one, put it down, delete the other one, and on we go to create the little circle, what do you call that, logo that I saw. And I decided I'd put it on the walls over here as well as on the other side. So as you go in, you see that. The one thing I did miss from this that's not in the build that I need to go back and do is it does say Cypress Circle Cafe up on the edge as you walk underneath it from the entrance area, which you'll see at the end of the video with the schematic and the cinematics, not schematic, and still shots. And so what I'm doing here is creating the first offshoot of the buildings by flipping up the roof pieces, because it already has the curve I need. So I can flip those up and then get that curve going. So that was how I created that part of the building. Then over here I decided I'm going to make one on the grid. We're going to cover it up with just some plaster right here on the edges so that I can get the other building, and we're going to move that to the other side, because they were kind of from the top. It looked like one building, but three different separate buildings going on. It's hard to explain. Like inside it's all one, but it looks like you also had kind of three things that they put together to make this. So one was a little elevated. So that was where I got the shapes for the outside from, was looking at Google Earth from the aerial views and kind of like the 3D views that they have. When you get into Google Earth, you can do 3D views around the buildings of whatever satellite images they have. And so I'm taking that little square I talked about earlier and going ahead and duplicating that over to the other side. So it is a gridded piece, so you can duplicate them, but everything has to be in that grid. So it gets a little complicated sometimes. This building is super complicated. Like if I wanted to duplicate the whole thing, I would not be able to, because it has multiple gridded buildings in it. And so the only way to really duplicate it would be to make a blueprint out of it and then put the blueprint down, because you can multi-select all of the pieces and do the blueprint, but you cannot just duplicate two gridded items together. You have to get creative about it. So I'm putting in this glass here, and this is looking out over the lake side of the Circle Cafe, and we'll have something very similar on the other side. And as I got into the inside of this building, I ended up having to kind of redo some of that, mostly because I used it to copy. So then I was like, my brain hurts over there, so we're going to come over here and work on this building a little bit. I kind of do that as I get stuck, or I'm not coming up with how I want to put something together, or it's fighting me. I'll move around to different parts of the build. Or if it's just tedious, like this is tedious, so I kind of left it alone for a little while, because it's not hard. It's just the same thing over and over again, and not exactly easy to grab the pieces that you want. So it's just popping those little boards, copy it, and bringing them up and getting them all the way around so that we can finish off this little upper section where it kind of has that same curve, and bringing it out to the back side of the building. Those little square pieces were a little bit further out, I think. I'm not sure how I finished it off. I can't remember if it was kind of in line or one was further out or further in from the other. Getting this to connect all nice and pretty, and I can see where I accidentally just moved a piece, and so I was fixing that right there. And then we're going to bring it all up so that it meets, and go ahead and bring this together. So I kind of followed the same line and was trying not to have too much of an angle going on, and I wanted them to meet, but I didn't want to fight it too much. So we're splitting those out of their grids so that I can get that angle to kind of bring it in right there. And I put in another one to split out so that hopefully I could get them to meet at the other side, so I can get the turn just right. So I had to add a few more, as you can see there, and we're gonna turn those in so we can get the back side of the building to go across there. Looking at it now, I probably should have come out a few more, and also when I was on the inside of the building, it was a little bit tight in there. Probably wouldn't have been a bad idea to have one more on each side, but oh well. It still turns out, I think, to be really great inside. It was pretty rough to build in there once I had, the ceiling on, and some tips to deal with that, which I didn't really do in this build. I could have removed the roof, but it was so complicated. I didn't want to mess up the groups for the circles in case I needed to move them again. But you can set your roofs into their own groups and then put them up in the air, kind of like I did with the tree in the beginning. And you can see here, I did think about just copying this straight up, but I kind of liked the way that it made, like a dual level roof inside, as the images that I had for the inside of the cafe were pretty sparse on the internet. And like I said, it's been a year since I've been to this zoo, and we did actually eat there, but I don't really remember. I wasn't paying attention to what the ceiling looked like. So again, just, I guess, artistic license in my recreation of the zoo. But one of the images that I had did show this section here, where it had, did have a little bit of difference in how the roof was on each side, and it had the steel beam with some wood or metal, I'm not sure which, up at the top, and some really cute bulb lights that hung down right here. And so we're going to recreate that and get that going up on top. And so to create it, I did a 4x4 space and filled up that space with everything that I wanted to be in it. And then I'm going to use a grid piece. I'm going to attach it to all of this group, as you can see right there, so that I can use that grid piece to easily move over and duplicate that into the space perfectly. And I'm going to do that a number of times with different things that I built in here. So a lot of the booths, I tried to make sure that I built them as a 4x4 area so that I could easily decorate them. So flooring, I did do the snap option mostly instead of Control X, because I wanted them to actually snap into the other one and be kind of perfect, because I'm not always perfect with that, and I've noticed when I just use Control X with floors, they'll get a little misaligned sometimes. So we're picking out our color scheme, and the colors that they had in the picture that I found online was green and black. So I'm going to put in a couple of regular tables, and then we're going to build some booths. In this image that I saw here, and I'm not sure if these images were real, because sometimes when you look at concept art for zoos, the concept art is so good it's hard to tell if it's a real picture or if it's a concept art for an area, because sometimes when I look for things, I actually find the concept art versus the real thing. But they had kind of a little different table. Obviously, the table that they had here you could look out, and it was a different setup, but more of a modern table. So that was why I picked this wood that I picked. It kind of had the same colors, but they did not have booths right here. So the inside is designed to function for the game, but also keep the color scheme of what I saw in the images when I Googled for the cafe and what I could see from Google Earth. So that way the guests will actually come in here. I'm going to put 2 restaurants inside of it, and they're gonna come inside, and I missed that, so here it is in slow motion being built as a start stop, is that what they call it? Stop motion, there we go. Because I lost some of my footage. So anyways, but it's designed for them to come in. It has the 2 restaurants and it's functional for the game. And then this is the outside. I forgot to hit record when I was building this stuff, so we're just gonna plop it in, and there it is. And so we're gonna take a quick little walkthrough of this space as it's finished. So you come up and you have all the plants. We have the cypress trees, and then we're going through this little area here where you can see the circle part of the cafe, what it's named after, with the bald cypress tree. I think originally this cafe was just a small little area, and then they built this big restaurant on the back side of it. So here's the interior of it in its complete state. I hope you enjoyed the video for this build. I did live stream it, and I have been live streaming Houston Zoo and recording it at the same time, so you can always check me out on Twitch. I tend to do that on Sundays with Houston Zoo, and then on Saturdays I do St. Louis Zoo, so I'm going to pop my Twitch links down at the bottom if you do want to pop over and watch the process of this being made. And sometimes I do live edit my videos as well if you want to watch that process. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you so much for checking out my video. Don't forget to hit the like button or subscribe if you like my content. May the RNG odds be ever in your favor.